Imagine a tech company just, you know, handing the United States government $50 billion in equity.
Yeah, just casually handing that over.
Right. And just to make sure the government regulates them favorably. I mean, it sounds like a movie plot, but that isn't a conspiracy theory. That is literally a proposal sitting on a desk in Washington right now.
It's wild. We are looking at a fundamental shift in the AI industry.
Exactly. And that is our mission for you today. So welcome to this deep dive into the sources where we're going to unpack a truly fascinating stack of tech news from the Tech Reader AI Digest, dated Friday, July 3, 2026.
Because we're witnessing the exact moment this industry transitions, right? Going from this unregulated, chaotic, Wild West scramble
Yeah.
into a heavily regulated trillion-dollar enterprise machine. I mean, the days of just dropping world-altering technology overnight, those are over. The rules of the game are being rewritten at this very second.
They really are. So we're going to break down how the government is stepping in, the unprecedented financial maneuvers companies are deploying just to survive that oversight, and what the physical breaking point of global infrastructure actually means for you. So, okay, let's unpack this.
We have to start with the tectonic shift happening in Washington. For a long time, the government has basically been playing catch-up.
Yeah.
Just relying on these chaotic emergency stocks whenever a lab tried to release something the state deemed, a bit too powerful.
Right, and if we look at the source material, June of 2026 was just an absolute nightmare for the industry. I mean, Anthropic tried to launch Fable 5.
And they were hit with that 20-day global suspension order.
Right, a 20-day halt. And then OpenAI tried to drop GPT 5.6, and the government just stepped in and forced them to gate it to, what, like 20 authorized partners?
Yeah, just 20. It completely dismantled their rollout schedules because those were emergency export control interventions. Essentially, the government was just slamming the big red panic button because they lacked a formal framework to evaluate what these models could actually do before they hit the open internet. They realized they were flying blind.
Yeah, which brings us to now. The White House is in these advanced negotiations with OpenAI, Google, and Anthropic to establish what they're calling, quote-unquote, voluntary AI release standards.
Right, voluntary.
Right, they're pushing for mandatory review timelines and explicit capability thresholds.
And the mechanism they're proposing to enforce those thresholds is incredibly specific. They are using cybersecurity benchmarks as the trigger for government evaluation.
Okay.
So the source notes that OpenAI's GPT 5.6 Sol scored 96.7% on internal capture the flag evaluations.
Okay, let's define what that actually means for a second because, it sounds like a video game.
Yeah, it does.
But in the cybersecurity world, capture the flag is a sandbox environment where an AI attempts to autonomously hack digital defenses. Like, it tries to breach a secure server, manipulate code, and extract a hidden file. And this model succeeded almost 97% of the time.
Which is terrifying. Right. So that score crossed a predetermined capability threshold, which automatically triggered an active government review.
I see.
But then you contrast that with Google's Gemini 3.5 Pro. It scored a 70.7% on a different benchmark, Terminal Bench 2.1.
Okay.
Because it fell below that intervention line, it successfully bypassed those pre-release checkpoints.
Okay, let me see if I have this straight. It's like the government saying, you can build a sports car as fast as you want, but we're only going to impound it if the car demonstrates the autonomous ability to pick the lock on the impound lot.
That perfectly illustrates the mechanism at play. Yes, the government is no longer trying to regulate the, physical size of the neural network or the amount of data it was trained on.
Right, the old metrics.
Exactly. They are exclusively regulating its autonomous capability to break digital infrastructure. We do need to look really closely at that word voluntary, though.
Yeah, I was going to ask about that.
Because in Washington, voluntary in this context actually means you either sign the agreement and comply, or you face those emergency directives we saw in June.
The panic buttons.
Right. Compliance is effectively mandatory.
But why are the frontier labs sitting at the table and agreeing to this? I mean, it seems like they're just giving up all their leverage.
Well, they're willingly trading their deployment freedom for predictability?
Predictability.
Okay, think about it from a purely financial perspective, right?
Yeah.
If you are preparing for a massive initial public offering, or if you're trying to sell a multi-year billion-dollar contract to a corporate enterprise buyer...
You can't have the government shutting you down.
Exactly. You cannot have the government pulling the plug on your flagship product for 20 days without without warning, regulatory instability creates a massive material risk to your valuation.
Yeah, that makes sense.
These companies desperately need a structured, predictable schedule, even if it means formalizing federal oversight.
Looking at this impartially, you can really see the competing incentives here. You have the government's very real need for cybersecurity review. Like, if a model can autonomously hack a network 97% of the time, the state obviously needs to evaluate that before it gets unleashed on the open internet.
Oh, absolutely.
But then the industry is looking at this saying, hey, we just need operational predictability so we can actually run our businesses.
Right. Neither side is inherently malicious here. They are just two massive forces with completely different sets of incentives clashing in real time.
Yeah, but if the labs are that desperate for regulatory predictability, the lengths they will go to achieve it are frankly staggering. So here's where it gets really interesting. OpenAI has proposed giving the U.S. government a 5% equity stake in their company.
Yeah, which is just an unprecedented financial proposal in American corporate history.
It's wild.
Let's break down the math from their June 8th confidential S-1 prospectus. OpenAI is targeting an IPO valuation between $830 billion and $1 trillion.
$1 trillion? Wow.
Right. So at those metrics, a 5% equity transfer makes the government's stake worth anywhere from $41 billion to $50 billion.
Wait, hold on. How is that even remotely tenable? I mean, if the regulator essentially owns $50 billion of the company they're supposed to be policing, isn't that an immediate, massive conflict of interest?
Oh, definitely.
By making the regulator a primary corporate shareholder, aren't they basically ensuring the government has a vested financial interest in OpenAI's stock price going up?
What's fascinating here is the calculated brilliance and, frankly, the severe systemic risks of this strategy. You are absolutely right to point out the conflict of interest. This is a maneuver known as an S-1 defense.
Okay, break that down for the listener. What exactly is an S-1 defense?
So, before a company goes public, they file an S-1 prospectus with the SEC. It is essentially a massive disclosure document where you have to legally list every single risk that could destroy your company's value.
Okay.
For OpenAI, the single biggest existential threat to their trillion-dollar valuation is government regulation.
Right, because the government could literally turn off their servers.
Exactly. So how do you neutralize that specific risk? You attempt to align the government's financial incentives with your own corporate success.
Wow. So you just make the regulator your loudest, most profitable shareholder?
Precisely. You give them 50 billion reasons to ensure your company thrives. And as the source details, the criticisms of this move are severe.
I bet.
Analysts argue that if the federal government accepts a multi-billion-dollar financial stake in OpenAI, it risks creating a state-sponsored monopoly. It introduces the immense danger of regulatory capture,
where the government might be incentivized, consciously or otherwise, to pass restrictive rules that protect their own investment while punishing competitors.
Yep, exactly.
I mean, how do Google or XAI or Anthropic even begin to compete in a market where their primary rival is literally funding the government that writes the rules?
It's a great question.
The Digest notes that neither Google nor Anthropic has formally responded to this model yet. And honestly, what could they possibly say?
It places the entire rest of the industry in an incredibly difficult position. From an impartial standpoint, we're watching market continuity collide directly with national security.
Yeah.
OpenAI is executing a ruthless strategy to protect its public valuation, but doing so by tying federal regulatory incentives to corporate equity. I mean, it's an absolute minefield for open market competition.
Yeah, and if OpenAI is trying to build a moat out of federal equity, it forces competitors who don't have that political leverage to fight an entirely different battle, which is just pure financial survival.
Right.
We really have to look at how the rest of the market is adapting, transitioning from this corporate maneuvering to the raw financial battle for enterprise dominance.
The unit economics war between OpenAI and Anthropic is currently the most intense battleground in the sector.
Absolutely. According to the internal financial metrics leaked in the Digest, Anthropic's unaudited revenue run rate is approaching $47 billion, and they're projecting a path to actual profitability by 2029.
Those numbers are massive. But we really need to look at the underlying mechanism of how they're generating that revenue compared to OpenAI.
Yeah, they're very different.
The source exposes two radically different philosophies on how to build a sustainable AI business.
Right, because Anthropic has confirmed over 1,000 institutional clients at the $1 million plus annual tier.
Huge accounts.
They're relying heavily on their tool Claude Code to execute large-scale code-based automation. They're literally having AI write and maintain software for corporations, like their massive initiative with Stripe.
Compare that to OpenAI's model. Their reported run rate is slightly lower, sitting between $25 billion and $33 billion.
Still massive, but
they are running a highly diversified, consumer-heavy engine with over 900 million weekly active users.
right. The unit economics really force this divergence. It's like, think of it like this. OpenAI is running the world's largest high-volume public transit system.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah, they are burning massive amounts of compute to answer billions of random, everyday questions from the public for $20 a month.
Right.
But Anthropic realized that compute is way too precious to waste on writing poetry or summarizing recipes. So they are hoarding their compute like a fleet of ultra-luxury private jets, reserving it exclusively to automate million-dollar coding tasks for massive corporations.
That analogy hits exactly at the core of the strategy. OpenAI is playing a volume game, and Anthropic is playing a unit economics game.
Right.
Anthropic has optimized for high-value corporate concentration. That enterprise dependency on tools like Claude Code creates incredibly sticky revenue.
Sticky, right.
Yeah.
Because once a massive corporation deeply integrates your AI to write and manage its proprietary software code, the switching costs are astronomical.
Exactly. It's technically and financially agonizing for that company to rip you out and switch to a competitor.
But the vulnerability there is revenue concentration risk.
Right.
Like, if OpenAI relies on $20 consumers, 100,000 people can cancel their subscriptions tomorrow, and the company barely feels it.
Exactly.
But if Anthropic relies on million-dollar corporate contracts, losing just a handful of those accounts is devastating to the bottom line.
The pressure is mounting. We're already seeing shifts in the broader market data, which shows that ChatGPT lost its absolute majority share of the broader generative AI market for the first time in May 2026.
The landscape is really fracturing.
It is, but we must remind you, the listener, to view these numbers with a critical eye.
Oh, for sure.
The 47 billion, the 33 billion, these are unaudited run rates. They are self-reported financial projections explicitly designed to build market hype before their public listings.
Marketing numbers, basically.
Yeah. Once those confidential S1 files are subject to independent public audit, we will finally see which of these two models actually holds up under real scrutiny.
Okay, so we have capability thresholds, a $50 billion government equity pitch, and tens of billions of dollars in enterprise revenue.
That's a lot.
But all of this software, all of these astronomical valuations, they don't just exist in the cloud. They require vast physical infrastructure. And the sheer scale of these operations is physically breaking the internet's backbone, sending shockwaves through the global ecosystem.
Yeah, the physical and digital strain is no longer theoretical. The industry is hitting a hard wall of compute constraints. Compute is physical hardware, right? Servers, cooling systems, power grids, and it is not infinite.
No, it's not. The digest highlights this perfectly with Anthropic. They're taking their flagship model, Fable 5, and forcing it off standard flat-rate subscription plans starting July 7th.
Yeah, shifting temporarily to usage-based credits.
Which is huge.
When one of the most well-funded companies on Earth has to change its billing model because it physically cannot process the consumer demand, the infrastructure layer is strained to the breaking point.
Definitely.
They're trying to balance this out by giving 5x higher throughput limits for their slightly older architectures like Sonnet 5 and Haiku at the highest spending tiers. But the crunch is real. They're even exploring custom silicon development with Samsung just to bypass the existing supply chain bottlenecks.
And the hardware race to solve that crunch is moving at blinding speed. Like OpenAI's GPT 5.6, so the model's still stuck in that government cybersecurity preview, is hitting inference speeds of 750 tokens per second on Cerebra's infrastructure.
That's incredibly fast.
Let's contextualize that number for a second. 750 tokens is roughly 500 words per second. That model is generating the text of an entire Harry Potter chapter in about a minute.
To sustain those speeds at a global scale requires an influx of capital that is just hard to fathom. We are seeing emergency infrastructure investments deploy worldwide.
Yeah, like Blackstone.
Right. Blackstone just announced a $30 billion multi-year commitment specifically targeting Japanese AI infrastructure. And SoftBank established an entire subsidiary called SB Neo just to manage its rapidly expanding US-based NeoCloud operations.
But simply throwing a mountain of cash at hardware doesn't automatically mean you win the race. I mean, look at Meta. The source reveals that Meta's internal assessments show they are significantly lagging in the enterprise deployment speed of their internal agents.
Which is surprising.
Yeah, and they're failing here despite having a capital expenditure budget of $125 billion to $145 billion.
It really highlights a crucial reality. Buying $100 billion worth of servers buys you the hardware, but it doesn't instantly write the bespoke, highly complex integration software required to get those AI models functioning securely inside corporate environments.
Right.
Microsoft recognizes this gap. They just launched their Forward Company initiative with a $2.5 billion allocation, embedding 6,000 engineers explicitly to hold the hands of enterprise clients and drive that deep integration.
And as that integration deepens, the security realities of the internet are shifting violently. The Digest notes a massive spike in vulnerability reporting in June. Across 21 organizations, roughly 1,500 critical common vulnerabilities and exposures, or CVEs, were attributed to automated AI-assisted discovery.
A CVE is a standardized record of a publicly known cybersecurity vulnerability.
Right.
So what this data point tells us is that AI agents are now autonomously prowling through corporate networks and identifying thousands of critical security flaws in a single month. The pace of discovery has completely outstripped the human capacity to patch them.
It's wild. So what does this all mean for you, the listener trying to navigate a world moving this fast?
It means every layer of the digital world you interact with is being forced to adapt its underlying mechanics in real time.
Yeah. Like if you're a web publisher, you're suddenly dealing with Cloudflare rolling out new granular controls. For the first time, you can actually block the massive model training web crawlers that are scraping your data without accidentally blocking the standard search engines you need for traffic. And if you're a developer, you're looking at tools like Claude Code, adding native artifact support. This visually automates pull request walkthroughs, fundamentally changing how you review and merge software code.
And if you're a security professional, your entire job has changed. You're now tasked with defending a corporate network against an internet where automated agents discover 1,500 new critical vulnerabilities in a matter of weeks.
Yeah, good luck with that. And if you're an investor, the mechanics of the market are shifting right under your feet.
Oh, definitely.
The Digest mentions XAI's mandatory passive institutional buying begins on July 7th to fulfill NASDAQ 100 index tracking. Basically, index funds are being forced to buy into the AI ecosystem whether they actively want to or not.
Wow.
And on a side note, XAI corporate leadership had to explicitly deny rumors about showcasing an AI handset prototype to investors.
We also can't ignore the structural shifts in how enterprises handle their data privacy. We're seeing companies like DeepSeek and Z.AI rapidly expanding BYOC adoption.
Bring your own key.
Exactly. Bring your own key. This is crucial for enterprise privacy. It means the corporate client holds the actual encryption keys to their data, ensuring the AI provider cannot see or scrape their proprietary information.
Right.
At the same time, we have platforms like Fireworks activating production hosting for the OpenWeight's GLM 5.2 architecture.
OpenWeight's being a massive distinction from just renting an API. It means developers can actually download the neural network's underlying brain and run it on their own private servers. It's just a constant, overwhelming flood of market moves happening everywhere all at once.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the physical infrastructure layer is no longer just about plumbing the internet. It is now the anchor of global policy.
Yeah.
We see senior executives from NVIDIA, AWS, and Microsoft formally joining the UN's AI for Good Global Commission. This has evolved far beyond a corporate revenue race. It's a geopolitical race to secure compute supply chains, establish decentralized environments, and maintain sovereign digital infrastructure.
It really is a completely new era. So to recap the journey we've taken through today's sources, we started in Washington unpacking how the chaotic era of emergency stops is being replaced by explicit capability thresholds and automated cybersecurity triggers.
Right.
We broke down OpenAI's breathtaking defense strategy offering to trade 5% of its equity potentially $50 billion, to turn its primary regulator into a shareholder.
Incredible.
We explored the unit economics war, contrasting OpenAI's high-volume public transit approach against Anthropic's highly concentrated private jet strategy for enterprise dominance. And finally, we look at how this staggering growth is physically breaking global compute limits, forcing multi-billion-dollar hardware investments, and fundamentally reshaping the security of the internet.
It is a phenomenal amount of structural change compressed into a very short timeline. But as we synthesize all these pieces together, the regulations, the infrastructure, the equity, it raises one final critical question to consider.
Okay, let's hear it.
We discussed OpenAI potentially offering the government a $50 billion stake. Ask yourself, what happens to the concept of open source innovation or even public safety when the most powerful AI systems in the world are not only completely intertwined with sovereign national security, but are financially propping up the very governments meant to regulate them?
Wow.
If an AI corporation becomes a government's best performing financial asset, who is actually regulating whom?
Man, that is a thought that is going to stick with me. The sheriff might have finally arrived in town, but it looks like the sheriff just brought a massive stake in the biggest saloon. Thank you for joining us for this deep dive into the sources. You are now armed with the most important insights and the underlying mechanics to stay well informed on where this technology is heading next. Keep questioning, keep learning, and we will see you next time.